poor bride ties the knot with a millionaire, yet his surprise stuns all. The grand ballroom shimmered, a dizzying display of wealth that felt impossibly distant from Ember Carter's reality. Her borrowed shoes pinched her toes, a constant, grounding reminder of her circumstances. She clutched the bouquet of wildflowers, a splash of color against the stark white of her altered wedding dress, a dress once belonging to her grandmother, now mended and reshaped to fit a dream that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. Edward Dean stood tall beside her, a silhouette of power and privilege. His tailored suit, the product of Savile Row craftsmanship, whispered of fortunes beyond Ember's comprehension. Yet his eyes, usually the keenest and most perceptive, were hidden behind dark glasses, blind. Murmurs rippled through the assembled guests, a sea of silk and diamonds reflecting in the chandeliers. Ember could feel their sharp, scrutinizing gazes, dissecting her with the precision of surgeons. They saw her as an anomaly, a wildflower among meticulously cultivated orchids, an outsider who had somehow breached the walls of their exclusive world. But none of them knew the truth. None of them knew the weight of the bargain struck, the desperate hope that fueled Ember's smile, or the unsettling secret Edward held close. Tonight was not just a wedding, it was a carefully orchestrated performance, a dance on a razor's edge where one wrong step could shatter everything. What price would Ember ultimately pay for this fairy tale? And what was Edward Dean truly hiding behind those dark glasses? Ember's life had always been a tapestry woven with hardship and resilience. Raised in a small, forgotten town nestled deep in the Appalachian Mountains, she'd learned early on the value of hard work and the fragility of hope. Her mother, a seamstress with nimble fingers and a weary heart, had instilled in her a love for beauty amidst scarcity, a talent for transforming the mundane into something extraordinary. But when her mother fell ill, the weight of medical bills threatened to crush them both. Edward Dean had entered their lives like a storm, a whirlwind of wealth and influence. He was a man of the world, a self-made millionaire who'd built his empire from the ground up. He had inherited nothing but clawed his way to the top with an iron will and a mind that calculated every move. His blindness, the result of a tragic accident years ago, had only seemed to sharpen his other senses, enhancing his intuition and amplifying his ambition. He visited Ember's town seeking respite, a temporary escape from the relentless demands of his corporate world. Drawn to her spirit and her artistic talent, he offered her a proposition, marriage in exchange for financial security for her and her mother. It was a business arrangement, a practical solution to both their problems. He needed a wife to fulfill a clause in his late father's will, a condition that would secure his inheritance. Ember needed a lifeline. Her friends warned her against it. "He's using you, Ember." Sarah, her closest confidant, had pleaded. "You don't know what you're getting into." But Ember knew the alternative, her mother's slow decline, their home foreclosed, her dreams extinguished. She saw Edward as her last hope, a risky gamble she had to take. She reminded herself it was only a year, and she could get on with her own life. Yet, as the wedding day approached, a nagging unease crept into Ember's heart. Edward remained an enigma, a man of few words and carefully guarded emotions. She couldn't shake off the feeling that he was hiding something, a secret that could unravel everything they were building. What were the true motives behind his proposal? And was Ember strong enough to navigate the treacherous waters of his world? The wedding vows echoed in the ballroom, each word a hammer blow against Ember's resolve. To have and to hold, from this day forward. The phrases felt hollow, devoid of the love and commitment they were meant to embody. Edward's hand, surprisingly warm and steady, gripped hers. As the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, a collective sigh swept through the room. Ember braced herself for the expected kiss, a formality that would seal their bargain. But Edward didn't lean in. Instead, he turned to face the assembled guests, a strange glint in his hidden eyes. "Before we celebrate," he announced, his voice resonating with unexpected authority, "there's something you all need to know." A hush fell over the room. Ember's heart pounded in her chest. What was he about to say? He paused, a dramatic beat that amplified the suspense. "My father's will," he continued, "contained a clause that many of you are aware of. I needed to marry to secure my inheritance. He paused again, letting his words hang in the air. Murmurs started again, this time louder. However, he added, his voice gaining strength, what you don't know is that the will also stipulated that my wife must be of noble blood. Ember gasped inwardly. Noble blood? She was the daughter of a seamstress from Appalachia. She saw Edward's lawyer, a man named Mr. Harding, look shocked beside him. Edward removed his dark glasses, revealing his sightless eyes. A collective gasp rippled through the room. But it wasn't his blindness that shocked them, it was the intensity of his gaze, the unwavering determination that blazed within them. I have proof that Ember is a direct descendant of the French royal family, he declared, his voice ringing with conviction. Her lineage can be traced back to Marie Antoinette herself. The room erupted in chaos. Ember stood frozen, her mind reeling. Marie Antoinette? How could this be possible? And why had Edward kept this a secret? The carefully constructed facade of their business arrangement began to crumble, revealing a tangled web of secrets and hidden agendas. What game was Edward playing? And how deeply was Ember entangled in it? The revelation sent shockwaves through the Dean family and their social circle. Whispers turned into accusations, doubts festered into open animosity. Edward's cousins, who had long coveted his wealth, launched a full-scale investigation into Ember's supposed lineage. Ember, meanwhile, struggled to make sense of it all. Edward presented her with a meticulously researched family tree, a document that seemed to defy all logic and reason. It claimed that her great-great-grandmother had fled France during the Revolution, carrying with her a secret that had been passed down through generations. It's true, Ember, Edward insisted. I hired genealogists to trace your family history. The evidence is irrefutable. But Ember couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. The story seemed too convenient, too perfectly aligned with Edward's needs. As the investigation deepened, Ember discovered that Edward had been tracking her for months, observing her from afar, learning her habits and her dreams. He knew more about her than she knew about herself. She felt like a pawn in his elaborate game, a puppet dancing to his tune. Why me, Edward? She demanded. Why did you choose me for this charade? He hesitated, his expression unreadable. Because, he finally said, you have a strength I admire. A resilience that reminds me of myself. But Ember wasn't convinced. She suspected there was more to it, a hidden motive that he was carefully concealing. She began her investigation, delving into Edward's past and discovering secrets that he had desperately tried to bury. She learned about his ruthless business dealings, his relentless pursuit of power, and the accident that had cost him his sight. She discovered that he had enemies, people who would stop at nothing to bring him down. And she realized that by marrying him, she had made herself a target. As Ember dug deeper, she stumbled upon a hidden clause in the will, a stipulation that Edward had deliberately overlooked. The will stated that if his wife was proven to be of noble blood, she would inherit half of his fortune upon his death. Suddenly, everything clicked into place. Edward wasn't just trying to secure his inheritance, he was setting Ember up to inherit half of it. But why? Was he planning to die? Was he in danger? Ember confronted Edward with her findings. He didn't deny it. I'm protecting you, Ember, he said. There are people who want me dead. If I die, they'll come after you too. But if you inherit half of my fortune, you'll have the resources to defend yourself. Ember was horrified. You're planning your death, she cried. And you're using me as your insurance policy? Edward remained silent, his expression inscrutable. Ember knew she had to escape, to break free from Edward's web of deceit. But she was trapped, bound by her vows and her desperate need to protect her mother. She had to find a way to outsmart him, to unravel his plan before it was too late. She found an unlikely ally in Mr. Harding, Edward's lawyer. He revealed that he had always suspected Edward's motives, but he had been powerless to stop him. He offered to help Ember, to provide her with the information she needed to expose Edward's scheme. Together, they uncovered a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of power, a plot to steal Edward's fortune and eliminate him from the picture. Ember realized that Edward wasn't just protecting himself, he was protecting her from a danger far greater than she could have ever imagined. The annual Dean Charity Gala was in full swing, a lavish affair that served as a gathering for the elite and powerful. Ember, dressed in a stunning gown provided by Edward, moved through the crowd, a mask of composure hiding her fear. She knew that tonight, the conspirators would make their move. With Mr. Harding's help, she had gathered enough evidence to expose their plot. But she needed to get close to Edward to warn him before it was too late. She found him on the balcony, overlooking the glittering cityscape. "Edward," she said, her voice trembling, "they're going to kill you." He turned to face her, his expression calm. "I know, Ember," he said. "I've been expecting them." "But why didn't you tell me?" she cried. "Why did you put me in danger?" He reached out and took her hand. "Because I trust you, Ember," he said. "I knew you would figure it out. And I knew you would do what's right." Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the ballroom into darkness. Screams erupted as chaos descended. Ember felt a hand grab her arm, pulling her through the crowd. "Come with me," a voice whispered in her ear. It was Mr. Harding. He led her to a hidden room where Edward was waiting. "We have to get out of here," Edward said. "They're closing in." As they made their way through a secret passage, they were ambushed by the conspirators. A gunfight erupted, the sound of gunfire echoing through the darkness. Mr. Harding was shot, collapsing to the ground. Edward grabbed Ember's hand and pulled her forward. They ran, dodging bullets, their hearts pounding in their chests. They reached a back exit, where a car was waiting. As they sped away, Ember looked back and saw the gala engulfed in flames. The conspirators had set the building on fire, hoping to eliminate all the evidence. Edward turned to her, his expression grim. "It's not over yet, Ember," he said. "They'll come after us. We have to be ready." He reveals that he's not as blind as he appears and has partial sight. His blindness was induced by a poison and not an accident like people thought. In the days that followed, Ember and Edward became fugitives, hunted by the conspirators and the authorities. They sought refuge in Ember's hometown, hiding in the mountains where she had grown up. With the help of her friends and family, they pieced together the final pieces of the puzzle. They discovered that the conspiracy was orchestrated by Edward's cousin, Charles, who had been jealous of his success and determined to seize his fortune. Charles had hired a team of assassins to kill Edward and frame Ember for the crime. He had even manipulated the will, adding the clause about noble blood into discredit Edward and seizing his assets. Ember and Edward knew they had to fight back to clear their names and expose Charles's treachery. They devised a plan, a risky gamble that could either save them or destroy them. They arranged a meeting with Charles, luring him to a remote location in the mountains. When Charles arrived, he was surrounded by Edward's men, who had been waiting in ambush. Edward confronted Charles, revealing the evidence he had gathered. Charles denied everything, but Edward played a recording of a phone call in which Charles confessed to the conspiracy. Faced with irrefutable proof, Charles broke down, admitting his guilt. He was arrested and taken into custody, and his dreams of wealth and power were shattered. Ember and Edward were finally cleared of all charges. Edward's fortune was secured, and the conspirators were brought to justice. But the experience had changed them both. Edward had learned to trust again, to open his heart to someone other than himself. Ember had discovered her strength, her ability to fight for what she believed in. They decided to stay in Ember's hometown to build a new life away from the corruption and greed of the corporate world. Edward invested in the town, creating jobs and opportunities for the community. Ember pursued her passion for art, opening a gallery that showcased the work of local artists. She and Edward were married in a simple ceremony, surrounded by their friends and family. This time, the vows were filled with love and commitment. As they looked into each other's eyes, they knew they had found something real, something that transcended wealth and power. They had found love in the most unexpected of places, a love that had been forged in the fires of adversity. They had found not just a marriage of convenience, but a true partnership, a bond that would last a lifetime. And as for the surprise that stunned all, Edward, with the help of experimental surgery, regained his sight. The world, once a blur of shadows, was now vibrant and clear, a testament to the power of love and hope. He reveals that he has been seeing all along, with partial sight, but he can now see with clear vision,